Sorry, I'm Thomas Dove from VidCheck, a UK company who make a product called VidChecker, which is for auto QC of file-based media and also correction of file-based media. So I guess the first question is, why would you do auto QC rather than just look at the video? The first reason is too many files took a little time. So maybe 10 years ago you had just an SD deliverable for broadcast, but now typically there may be quite a few different outputs. I was speaking with someone earlier on today, one of our customers, and they said that sometimes they produce 21 different deliverables of the same file, or perhaps 38 different deliverables of the same file. And the question is, you're not going to look at 38 deliverables of the same file, so there's too much to deal with all the different versions one produces for HD or whatever, iPad or whatever. Secondly, within those versions, they may be edited for content, for example, if there's some for different markets, perhaps with or without inserts for adverts, and with different audio channels and different languages and so on. And a reason for doing auto QC is you can process multiple files concurrently and do so fast in real time, so it's a lot cheaper than having people doing that task. The next reason is it's different with file-based media compared with a live stream like an SDI stream. Some of the technical faults and things that could be wrong with a file you just cannot see. So if you're just looking on a screen, you can't see if a file is H.264, or if it's VC1, or if it's MPEG-2. You can't see by looking at it. You have to use another tool to find out what's in the file. Perhaps you could use something like media info, but then it relies on someone opening or using some sort of tool to open the file and say, actually, yeah, this is the right format, and then comparing with what's required. Again, it's a bit of a manual task. Other things are harder to do. I mean, some things like just the basic codec in there is fairly straightforward. But some things like if the GOT structure is incorrect, you're not going to see that, and with a lot of tools, you're not going to get that information. There's a lot of technical things that someone receiving the file might require to have there, which you can't see, and you need tools to find out what's going on. And a better way to do that is do it automatically. Other obvious things, I mean, if you have a few bad blocks or blockiness errors in a single frame, blink and you miss it, obvious thing. And audio levels, yes, you can look at meters, but if you wish to do that, but listening and so on won't do the job. And essentially you need analysis tools to do these tasks, to find these technical problems. Clearly also there's an issue of consistency there, and with the quantity of media one's dealing with, you want to have consistent video levels, consistent audio levels, and if you're delivering nominally the same file type to the same content receiver, it should be the same and tested the same every time, and that's clearly hard to do as a person. But if you have a template of standard tests and you use that same template, then you're doing the same test over and over again, and that can be done with automation, automated QC. The last point, on an automatic audit trail, sometimes there can be a question of finger pointing, well, you didn't do the test, or did do the test, or didn't do it right, and it's useful to have a report out, a document that says, well, I did all these tests, it passed all these tests, or these were the results. And to produce that sort of report and audit trail automatically, whether or not you send it to the content receiver, it's useful to have that as proof of what's been done and how it was tested and so on. So what do you use auto QC for? Because it's good for some things and not so good for others. Technical tests, not editorial sort of decisions there, or creative decisions, should we say. So, for example, a QC system can't know that a person's skin is too red. I mean, maybe there's a sunset scene, for example. Well, how would a QC system know unless you tell it, in which case it's pretty hard to do. Or a scene is darker than intended, or as a sepia cast, maybe that's the colour look you were going for, the editor was going for, the creative was going for. And the QC system won't be suitable for finding those things. So you may well need to do a quick eyeball as well to see that or the person producing the file originally would do an eyeball to check the creative intent is there. And it's really the technical aspects you'd be checking with the auto QC system. The next point really is sorting the good from the bad. I mean, no one gets everything right the whole time, and there's too much material to look at all of it cost effectively. But you can use an AutoQC system for sorting the known good from the bad. So typically with our customers, we'll say, well, you'd be aiming for 95% pass rate, we say. So 95% can be checked, passed through, is good, and can carry on to the next stage of the process, whatever that might be, whether it's transcode and produce other versions. But then get a notification of what the problem is, where the problem is, for example, the time code, and then someone can take a decision as to what to do about it. So in that case, it cuts the manual element of QC down to a manageable amount, and things where it requires a human to decide. So, for example, if our auto QC says, well, there's blockiness at this particular point in the file, well, there's a decision to make then. Okay, that's a bit blocky. Is that too bad? Is it a news item that has to go out very quickly and you can't do anything about it? Is it something that's a premiere movie you want to send back and get re-encoded? So that sort of decision is to be made at that point, and that's where you do a manual intervention, but that's on the smaller part of the content, not the 100% of it. So VidChecker is a software we sell, and it's for particularly files, dealing with files and auto QC of files. Windows software does correction as well, so it checks the file aspects of such things as aspect ratios and resolution, that is HD, and the right video codecs and audio codecs and right audio channels are there and so on. But then also we'll open up and analyze the video and check the video levels and check that if you want to have color bars and then black and a slate and the program and black lead out, that all those elements are there and they're there at the right time and the right length and so on. And things like checking field order and such like that. But then also on the audio side, checking audio levels and loudness and checking for clicks and pops and all that sort of thing. So a pretty thorough check on the actual video and the actual audio, including something in there which is the standards compliant PSE testing. So that's part of the product there. So you don't need to send it out for a separate, send your media out for a separate PSE check. It's all covered in the product. But also correct the video and audio levels, and we do a unique correction on the video which maintains the video quality. It's not just legalization, it's what we call intelligent correction or shaping of the video. And on the audio, meeting the EB requirements, or if you're delivering to the US, the CALM requirements. Something added in fairly recently is DPP templates. So if you select a DPP template, it will check the media matches that requirement there. And if you're using other systems or integrating other systems, VidChecker integrates with Content Agent and others, and so you can have a VidChecker appearing as part of that workflow, as Owen will show you later. So we designed it to be used by operators and to take account of current processors. So if you throw processing power at this, it'll split the processing across the cores, and we certainly have customers who crank through hundreds of hours of HD material every day using a license or two of VidChecker. And you can run that locally, or you can run it in the cloud operation if you wish to do that. So on like Amazon Web Services, you can run it remotely on that, or on VMware as well. Part of it, I'll come on to the workflow in a minute actually. Something fairly new also is what we call VidChecker Post version, which has all the same checks in, including like the PSE checking as well, and the loudness correction and so on. But it's a very low cost, a relatively low cost entry-level version, particularly for post-production houses. So if you're producing a fairly small number of files and you're paying a lot, I guess, maybe for a PSE check, you find it very cost-effective to use VidChecker Post. It checks one file at a time rather than standard VidChecker that does 4 at a time, but it does all the checks you would need to do in order for delivering files to a broadcaster or content distributor there. And you can upgrade from one to the next. So a very simple workflow there is you get a bunch of files coming in, and VidChecker will do the QC, the list of tests that you have in the template, and will sort the good from the bad. So you hope the good is the sort of 95% or more, and then the good folder, the OK folder, will be perhaps the next stage to your process. So on the left side, you would maybe have the mezzanine file coming in, the source file, and you're required to produce different versions and different transcodes. So first thing you do is you check the mezzanine is good, and then you do the transcodes, and then the OK file is perhaps a watch folder as the input to the transcoder to turn out all your different versions. So at least then, when you're starting to do your transcodes and your versioning, you know you're starting off with something that's the right format and the right quality and doesn't have lockiness problems, and the video levels are good and the audio levels are good and so on. So it's a good starting point. And those that are not good are moved into perhaps a reject folder, and then get an email or a report or both saying what's wrong, and then you can go and look at those and see whether it really is a problem or not, if you need to do something about it then. So that's a simple workflow. How you'd apply that in a post-production environment, perhaps when you've done a render out of the file, then you would use perhaps VidChecker Post, perhaps controlled by Content Agent, to do the checking and moving the files through. Or more complex, sorry, I guess the next point is that can be local or could be on a cloud where you're doing that checking. This is a more complex example where you've got files in on the left, but also the bottom left you have perhaps video tape coming in, or perhaps a FlexiCart. You're doing ingest and you're digitizing the file that way, and you do a QC at ingest there, and that could be the mezzanine source file. Then you do a transcode, and you check the transcodes, that all the different transcodes have been done as they need to be done, and the different versions have been produced, either sent out as files or transmitted there. So you could have a local version of that, where in this example we've got the processing is done on servers here. Oh, cursor isn't there. So it's, the primary node and secondary nodes are the processing servers, is how it's organized. And they do the actual checking and read the content from a network storage typically. And then that's controlled via a browser, when multiple web browsers can dial in, or locally, remotely. Or it can be controlled via a system such as Content Agent there. And that can be done locally, or you can also do that remotely and have Content Agent and VidChecker running in the cloud and transfer the files using a Aspera to that. So turning to the DPP, so VidChecker does check into the DPP requirements. You pick the DPP SD or HD template, and that's pretty much all there is to it, and it does all the checks that you need to do there, including the PSE check in that. And the sort of report you get out of that, I guess you can just about see that, is not just the MXF metadata, but all the different fields that you would have to have in a DPP shim there, and it reports all those there, and you can see those there in a PDF or XML report. And if you take the XML version, you can directly import that to another system and do cross-checking and so on if you want to do that, or feed it through to other parts of your workflow if you want to. Okay, I'm done.